Instagram's provided the following feed if you want it, but they buried it under a menu that nobody can find. I challenge both of you to go try to find the following feed on Instagram. They just continue to get away with not changing the defaults.
We talk about AI and all this stuff, like the world is about to change dramatically, and then I'm still having to click my cookie selection on every website, and it's super annoying.
I'm starting to address this at like the operating system level. I have forced myself to finish the New York Times connection puzzle before I can check Instagram in a day. I think these behaviors are pretty entrenched. Not to go too far down the AI rabbit hole, or since we don't have Sam, maybe we can actually have an interesting conversation on this.
I was going to say, let's actually have an AI conversation.
More or less. Is it no or is it yes? We'll debate the text that's best when we get more or less. Dave and Brit plus Sam and Jess. Put it all right to the test. More or less.
Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of More or Less with less. Because it's just me on the lesson side this week.
Thank God.
Sam's on a plane. I can only guess where he's going, actually. This is fun
he's
trivia.
flying a plane or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's flying a plane?
No, he's on a plane. He's going to one of these conferences that can't be spoken of.
When isn't Sam at a conference is the real question.
You guys said it, not me.
No, I was at your conference this week. Jess, you just had a conference.
I was going to say the one conference Sam was not at was WTF, Women in
We
Tech
would
and
have picked him
Finance.
out.
For the information.
It was great.
Thanks for coming, Brit. Do you have a good time?
I had a great time. I saw so many people I love and met a lot of new ones. And I just have to say it. I know that, the content was everything, and we're going to talk a lot about that, but you just did a great job, Jess. You ran the show well. You looked great. Yet again,
Aw,
I'm just,
thanks,
I
Brit.
thought I was just proud to be your friend sitting and
Aw.
cheering really loudly in the front row.
Brit
At
was
the event.
seriously heckling our speakers.
I was.
With
I
her,
told you
with
I was.
her
Good.
energy.
Heckling
need some
sounds
heckling.
negative.
No, it was heckling, just cheering, whooping. Like when I mentioned our presenting partner for the event, Amazon, Brit would scream.
I ran an ad business for a long time.
We gotta give them the love.
am running it in some ways, but you gotta love those brand partners.
Love them.
And so I
All
was
of
making sure
them.
they got the juice. Yeah, they knew that we
They
were
got
excited.
the
Amazon
juice.
was there. Yeah.
I love it. You and Julia Hart's our dear friend. Every speaker who came up, they got the high fives. They got the whole thing.
We almost did the soccer bridge, but we chose not to. We stopped there.
Well,
So.
this is we for those there may be some conference attendee organizers on the pod, and we start with the late night Monday session, which is always a risky thing after dinner because you never really know where it's going to go. But Kirsten Green and Amy Griffin, and then Carla Welsh and Beth Galletti of Amazon, all I felt really held down the night. So really brought the energy. And next day we had Liz Reed, who runs Google Search, Chelsea Clinton talking about some very cool work she's doing, great panels on tech and media, co-founder of Anthropic. So it was a lot of content.
My old boss, Marissa Mayer, she was there too.
Marissa was great.
Yeah.
I got to ask her a question I've long wanted to ask her, which is sort of what did she make of her time at Yahoo? What did she learn? And then also, what did, Marissa's sort of she doesn't really engage on this, is the press nasty to you because you're a woman kind of thing. She's very good at, but it was, I think she's made a ton of mistakes. She's done a lot of great things, but I do think the press treats her unfairly. So we talked a little bit about that. And
okay.
not now. I know. I think Yahoo was really
Oh, well, yeah, that was
really
era.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
But then she said, which actually takes us to some news, she was asked about a potential breakup with Google. And she said, she thinks either way, the company will be fine. And actually said that if, there are plenty of examples of companies getting broken up and the entities still being worth a lot, which was interesting to me. It seems like a very rational answer, but, tech people hear the word breakup and think the sky is falling, usually.
Well, why don't you tell what's the latest on the breakup stuff?
Yeah. So, and then today, there were headlines. So there was a court decision on antitrust that went against Google, but we've still been waiting for what the remedies are that the government is going to push for. And we got a little more detail, I guess late last night or recently about that, which basically says that a breakup could be on the table. And I don't think they were significantly more specific than that. And of course, a breakup could mean many things. I mean, one of the things at stake is, Google has many different advertising businesses, and even within display, it's got some where it's sort of the marketplace for some types of advertising, somewhere it's selling directly. And a lot of the cases really focused on some of those businesses. There are many different cases.
YouTube.
But
Yeah.
YouTube. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know. What do you guys think the government should break up Google?
I was a Googler, but I have to admit, I kind of do. I mean, don't you think we just need to be able to be more competitive in this industry? And, we were at a dinner last night with like 15 VCs, and the question was like, do you think that, the internet has produced all these companies that have accrued trillions of dollars in value? Mobile was like the next wave that produced companies like Uber with like $160 billion in value, but not like trillion-dollar companies. And do you think AI will be the same, better, or worse than those two sort of cohorts? And it's just like everyone on the table was like, well, it's all going to fall to the incumbents, but it will be bigger than mobile, but incumbents will still hold out. Unless I think there is a meaningful, regulation and sort of breakup across some of these companies. But I don't even know how that would go. Like, what would you break?
Yeah, and actually, I was just looking this up as opposed to just remembering things. And I guess what the Justice Department said was that it might push for Google to divest Chrome, Android, and Play, its app store.
How does that impact the monopoly?
Yeah, well, I guess search, is like Google searches is sort of embedded. Less so in Play,
Yeah,
I suppose.
Isn't it about targeting search itself and trying to reduce its market dominance, which seems to be held together by there's Chrome, there's the Android operating system, there's the Apple deal, so Safari, right? And then there's...
Which is very much in jeopardy.
Yeah, and then there's... the Play Store... does that matter? I don't know. And what does this even mean? And how long would this take, right? And what would the actual downstream implications be? Antitrust law is such a difficult, weird thing in the American, ecosystem. On the one hand, I really don't want more regulation in the world. It's like there's already so many regulations that it's almost impossible to innovate in any direction. On the other hand, we do have an enormous consolidation of power in big tech right now. I mean, it's truly unbelievable. We almost don't visualize it enough how big the consolidation at the top is. Maybe that's what we need more of from you, Jess, is some really crazy visualizations that help people truly understand just how big these things are compared to the rest of the ecosystem. And so it does seem for American competitiveness that we need something to happen. But what is a different question entirely.
So I'm interested, I just looked this up. So the Google Play Store and Android are each about a $50 billion annual business. And that's
these things are
Fortune
50 businesses on their own.
But the Google Ads business is approximately $225 billion. Which is different, but not as,
But I wonder, and I think this is actually Google's defense, but I wonder, Android's open source. And of course, ish. There are different forks, and then there's the Google version of Android, which is where they bundle their services.
Which is what everybody uses because they're forced to in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. I mean, I would say take aim at stuff like that, which I think the governments have in the EU, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there could be these very anti-competitive practices in things like that, but I also I don't know. Like, I think Android's like pretty important for the world.
Well, but the question is whether or not Android should operate on its own, independent of the mothership, right? And
Right.
It's funny, I haven't spent enough time thinking about this to really have a well-formed opinion as to which pieces to cleave off to create a more competitive environment and how on earth you would possibly go about doing that and how long it would take.
I mean, I think and Dave, that's a good point because, a lot of us in and around the industry for years, people have been saying, break up big tech or da-da-da. And like, it's kind of interesting that now these proposals are really advancing to their furthest ever kind of state. And I guess where I am at this moment is more like, I think taking really strong aim at like the practices is important. I'm willing to accept that may not solve some of these problems because the scale is just so big, like that the habits have been formed already, and that's kind of game over. But I also think that it is really uncharted territory. I mean,
It is.
like what have other companies been broken up? I mean, AT&T, okay.
AT&T
I
was
have to
easier
go back and study
because
that.
there was quite literally a physical nature to the AT&T network, which resulted in much higher prices and all these kinds of things. So you could be like, oh, we're going to make a regional bell over here and a regional bell over there. And, we're going to break the literal network up. In the case of Microsoft as the other example, well, what practically happened with Microsoft? It seems as though, they got slowed down. I remember being up at Redmond during the early years of Facebook when we first did the original ad deal with Microsoft. And I remember being up there and there would be like literally 20 PMs in the room every time we did a meeting because there was like a person managing the regulation for like 20 different reasons for every single move that we talked about doing. And so like, what did Microsoft actually do? It like added 20 PMs to the room, right? And things got really, really slowed down. So it's almost like the government operating system showed up inside of Microsoft and slowed it down to like the crawl of the DMV for like 10 years, right? Microsoft, like after the, time period was up, I don't remember how long it was, just like slingshotted back to the number one most valuable company in the world, like with a vengeance, right? And basically like dominates in a whole bunch of areas. Again, notwithstanding one of which is AI. And so what's really going to happen here is the real question to me. And like,
but do you think, Dave, it matters that they would do this potentially in the next 5 years when there is this big new, computing inflection with AI. And so maybe this like knocks Google on its knees a bit to your point, like Microsoft was, or just slows them down.
I mean, I wonder, and I'm just riffing here. This is like, but what if this is a blessing in disguise for Google? Like basically, the knock against Google when I was interviewing, so Liz Reed runs Google Search. She runs product and engineering for Google Search. And I said, the perception is you guys are way behind. Like Perplexity exists. I mean, not that Perplexity is any or close to the size, but like, you're way behind is the perception, right? When it comes to AI, like why? And she didn't really answer the question. I mean, she gave the sort of what a executive candidate does say in those situations and talking about lessons learned and so forth. But there's one answer to that question of why Google in some areas has fallen behind, which is just they're too big and there are too many people and there are too many lawyers in the room. Now, the lawyers aren't going away, even if they split up, right? There are probably more. And so I kind of wonder, like if, and Eric Schmidt was taped saying comments that he then said he didn't mean to say or didn't say, saying Google was losing to OpenAI because they were only going into the office 3 days a week and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I think maybe that's the it's not clear that it's doom and gloom, whatever the scenario is. Now, what's clear is that these legal issues are creating like a next level of bureaucracy and distraction, and obviously undergoing any sort of restructuring would only add to that. So
here's the question, totally independent of whatever the legal and governmental muckety mucks want to do or talking about doing, which is, how do we make America the most competitive it possibly can be in this era? How can we be the most innovative? How can we unleash innovation again in Silicon Valley? And what we do know is that more and more and more regulation of big tech equals less and less and less acquisition of small tech.
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Which results in the complete and total freezing of the innovation ecosystem of Silicon Valley. And so the worst possible outcome here would be that whatever happens here causes even more regulation and even more slowing down of innovation, because these trillion-dollar capital holders can no longer acquire literally anything, right? And it gets even worse than it is right now, because it's pretty bad right now, And so the question is, what regulatory move here would actually unleash more innovation, which needs to be able to access liquidity at some point, right, along its innovation curve. And the investors and the players in the ecosystem need to be able to access liquidity to fund the innovation. And right now, it's completely frozen. And so to me, like, that's the scary question, right?
Yeah. And it's also the IPO market. I mean, Kirsten Green of Forerunner mentioned at WTF, she said, as much as, we'll take M&A, but like we're going, like venture in the whole ecosystem needs IPOs.
Well, I think that's because
but they're the same thing.
The M&A market's frozen.
Well,
the multiple, I mean,
fair,
yes,
but like,
the
I
returns
think,
liquidity
I
is
think
liquidity.
if like all these Magnificent Seven companies were making multi-billion-dollar acquisitions more frequently, Kirsten would say something different, right? Like they want to get out at a certain multiple.
It's just a multiple, and historically, you can have more upside in the potential of an IPO. Now it depends.
Not
when
always,
you sell,
maybe.
right?
But Jess, this is kind of my point.
A lot of people regret going IPO.
Is
They'd
that the
rather just have the
Magnificent
cash in the bag and get out.
This is actually kind of my point, is that Magnificent Seven are now actually kind of an IPO. Like the scale of the liquidity in these seven companies is so large that selling to one of these companies is as, the scale of it is almost the same as, what, Amazon went public for 400 million or something at the time, which, maybe
Wiz
that's a
was
billion.
being looked at for 23 billion.
That's
Figma
unbelievable.
was being looked at for 20 billion. It's like,
Okay, but those deals didn't go through.
But if they did, it's because there's like so much of this antitrust stuff.
Yeah,
I'm
I
saying
think
I think
that's definitely true with Figma. I'm not sure. I think Wiz was. I don't know what was going on there. I don't think that was.
I just
really
mean
real.
the scale of what the discussions were for those companies would be real unlocks that would make a
This
startup
is the world
probably
we live
want to
in
go
now.
M&A rather than IPO, right? The founder dealing with IPOs, like post-IPO founder
I
haze
think
is
that
real.
there is a tension you have to acknowledge, though, in saying we need more competition.
Absolutely.
And then being like, why can't the big guys buy whatever they want?
Well, that's, I guess, the thing is, like, I haven't heard a proposal yet as to, maybe this is the part of the cycle that we're in, which is we're trying to figure out what these proposals should be. And what we actually saw today was like a trial balloon, and they're hoping for ideas from people to kind of try to help them figure out what the right series of regulations might be that won't freeze things up even worse.
I'm just trying to think like what a Chrome Android Play company is. Like what is that company? That's a browser.
Yeah, it's a front end. It's a front end company, right? It's like the front end of the internet company kind of situation.
But the browser doesn't make money, so the browser doesn't promote. That App Store does.
Well, the browser makes money through search.
Right. But then what the browser has to do is like go through a fair and open process to figure out which search engine's going to make it more money. I mean, there's one clear answer.
Wouldn't
To
that be
what's-
inclusive into Chrome? No?
No,
The
but I'm
Google-
saying like if this is a separate entity, like
The devil is in the defaults,
yeah.
right? And so perhaps it's Chrome now is, an independent company. The default can no longer be Google search, and
But you
the
can't
user
tell
has
an
to be able to
independent
choose.
company. Yeah, but like the user will still choose Google.
Maybe.
Mm,
I don't know.
maybe.
I use DuckDuckGo. I love it.
Great. People are still going to choose Google. I mean, it's just not clear to me. You could also say upon installing Chrome, I don't know what the workflow is like these days, but there's no there's no default for search if you download Chrome.
I guess that's what I'm saying is that like when
That'd be easier
when
than
you
creating
first
a
set it
separate
up,
company.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when you first set it up, basically you have to no longer be default. That's no different than what was asked of Microsoft with the
Yeah, I feel
browser
like
itself.
these days I feel like I get more prodding to choose my adventure.
And in fact, you could apply this to Amazon. You could apply this to Meta. You could have a
Apple.
situation where you basically say to Meta, you know what? You do not get to choose the default algorithm for users anymore. Users should be able to choose their own algorithm as to how to sort your content.
Or
Right.
Apple doesn't get to run the App
Right.
Store.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. Basically, like defaults are no longer guaranteed in any place, especially if
So
you're
it's
a
like,
large,
what a
big tech
ridiculous
player.
outcome for consumers, right? I mean, it's just like, I don't want to pick my app store and I
It's
don't
so
want to pick my
messy.
feed. Like I want to decide if I don't like the app and what it's serving me to stop using the app. But
I was
mean,
having a
it's-
conversation with someone recently about password control and security and how
Ugh, it's so
one
bad, guys. I'm
password
going
is
to the
actually not the
dongles
best.
everywhere. Are you doing
I
the
mean,
dongles?
I do have dongles, but that also terrifies me. If you lose that, it's crazy.
Don't lose your
But
dongle.
apparently, I think probably many of us and a lot of people that listen use 1Password or LastPass for their password security vault. And it's actually not the most secure. The best is actually like the Apple Vault because you have biometrics like your face and your fingerprint that can unlock things. And the problem with that is, every time you log into something on Chrome, you have to like save
It's
your
not
password
just the
from Chrome
biometrics; it's the
into
actual
Apple.
chip. It's the secure
Right.
enclave. Yeah.
And so, like, ideally, you would have us use Safari to save all your passwords as you're logging into things all the time into your Apple Vault, and that Apple Vault would be like your one place you store all your passwords. But the reality is, no, like most people use Chrome, and so we have this interesting, like, blend of Google, Apple services on our probably mostly iPhones that are making all of our password storage and security infrastructure much more difficult to use. So I wonder
Yeah.
if I had the Chrome browser, if I could add like Safari search.
Or Safari, password storage, right? Like because
Password
Chrome has
storage
its own
into my
password
Chrome
storage.
browser.
The more
Yeah,
we're
that's
talking
what I
about
want.
this, the more I believe that the thing that they should target the defaults. Like targeting the defaults is the thing that nobody talks about properly. It's just like this wild thing that like every company just like gets away with setting the defaults, all of the time and kind of hand waving like, oh, there's all these things we're doing to help with whatever problem that, the government and the market is asking for, but they just continue to get away with not changing the defaults.
I feel like a lot of regulation has pushed on that a little bit. I mean, I agree with that. The question just is the habit
Not
so
the big
strong?
ones. Not the big
Yeah.
ones, right? Like forcing people, like giving people the choice to choose the algorithm, right? A good example is Instagram. Instagram's provided the following feed if you want it, but they buried it under a menu that nobody can find. I challenge both of you to go try to find the following feed on Instagram.
But what do I want? I don't want to
What do you
choose
want
my
instead?
algorithm. I don't even know how to judge my algorithm.
The following feed shows you everything that your followers are posting without an algorithm.
But I don't want that.
Well, fine. But like, if you wanted it, you should be able to get
Yeah.
it, right? And I bet you
sure.
can't find where that interface is in Instagram if you open it up right now. And so the fact that this is buried, same goes with search, right? Like you can change your default search engine on Chrome, Most people have no idea how to do it. And so I think that this is kind of the thing, right? Again, back to Microsoft, this is the whole thing. Like, is the default browser on Windows Internet Explorer,
Right.
or can
So, Dave-
Netscape be there, right?
So for the thought exercise, if that world changed and instantly there was no search engine tied to a particular browser and so forth, and
No
we were
app
in
store
exactly
tied to a phone, no
Sure.
algorithm tied to a social app, right?
Okay, yeah, the algorithms. I see your point, but I'm just
I just disagree. Like,
we can disagree, but let me ask my question. So, and the same concentration of tech power existed. Would we be concerned about that?
yeah, probably.
It's sort of
market cap.
Yeah, right. Like if you changed all of these things, or if you implemented that choice. I mean, I think these behaviors are pretty entrenched. I think what disrupts it, most like any other tech wave, is actually is something new. Right?
I mean, I guess the best example I can think of, Jess, is when Apple chose to put a dialogue in front of people that said, would you like to be tracked or not by this app? Right? That dramatically changed the game in terms of what consumers chose to do, right? Some percentage, a very large, in fact, a large enough percentage of consumers chose not to be tracked that it impacted the market cap of many very large advertising businesses, right?
And then they found other ways to track them, and their market caps have fully recovered and surged to new heights.
It's fine.
But yes.
But they, they provided this choice, right? And so, I'm not sure, right? Like maybe.
Yeah.
I also just want to tell my browser, sorry, this is more of a product feature request. I
Yeah.
just want to tell my browser I only want the necessary cookies and not the marketing ones. And please just select that on every website for me.
So you want
So
like
it's-
cookies for like stored passwords or something like
yeah,
useful.
Yeah. It's like we talk about AI and all this stuff. Like the world is about to change dramatically. And then I'm still having to click my cookie selection on every website. And it's
I think, guys,
super annoying.
I don't know what the analogy is. Maybe David, you talk. I'm starting to address this at like the operating system level where I'm just getting more annoyed with all my technology. So I just put my phone down. Like I've just kind of given up in like making this experience a little bit better or, making this feed a little less annoying in this way. And so I've just said every week I want my screen time on my iPhone to go down.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think
Doesn't
this
have to go
is
down by
pretty
a lot.
universal.
I think
this
it
is
is
But I'm
pretty
just
universal.
doing that. And so I'm not even, I've become, and it's in some ways bad because I'm becoming a little bit like blind to like cookie, no cookie, whatever. But I'm just trying to use it all less.
And
Yeah, I
blind
think
to
that's
like
pretty
what's going
universal.
on, on Instagram or like, being totally ahead of email. I've just, I'm usually a person that's inbox zero, I'm on
Yes,
top
you're
of everything.
very good,
Slack
Brit.
box zero, text message zero, WhatsApp zero. And I just am like, I give up and I'm going to be behind. I'm just going to be behind now. And I'm going to
Guys, I bought some physical books.
Yeah.
I do
I'm
love my
thinking
Kindle
about-
though. Love
I'm
my,
thinking about getting a physical alarm clock and not
Yeah.
having my phone next to me at night. I haven't told
you
Dave
should do that.
Also, I just
That's awesome.
discovered my 8 sleep mattress.
I
has
think we need to
an alarm
just
function
normalize-
that vibrates.
Guys, we're like, we're shedding technology, but
I
our
need
8
to-
sleeps and our Aura rings.
No, my
and
8
our-
sleep is my alarm clock. I don't need my phone anymore. It just buzzes me awake. It's kind of
I
amazing.
wouldn't-
We
I
need to
can't trust that
normalize
feature.
That this is the best possible thing that you could be doing for
Yeah.
your health.
And so far, my phone it's gone down by like 2 minutes every week.
Wait,
Yeah.
what is your starting point? Will you dare to say?
I think it's like around 3 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know what
But
mine
what's
is.
your desktop
I'm gonna
time?
look.
I don't want to know, Dave.
I don't look at the desktop. It's around 3
Yeah,
hours.
it's messy. Yeah.
If
I
I'm
think that's
traveling,
normal.
it goes up because my desktop is lower. But
I think 3 hours is low for someone that works in tech.
I also think that. Thank you, Britt.
I'd
I've
be
been
curious
very
what
proud.
Sam's is. We should follow up on this next week.
Sam has this. Every time I ask him, he has a convoluted way of telling me that it's not a appropriate tracker or something. So it's got to be like 90 or something.
Yeah, I would go for that too.
Well, it's
Oh,
not. There
bummer.
aren't 90 hours in a day, but
I don't have. Shoot, I have a new phone, iPhone 16. So it's dead. I'll tell you next week.
Okay, Sam and Dave have to report back next week. This is
Yeah.
gonna be a big
Right.
one.
And also, but Brit, what's yours? Hearing
Mine's also like 3 hours and 30 minutes. I think you're lower.
yeah, that's
than me.
good. That's
Except
good.
on vacation, but it's less about exact amount of time because most of my time is spent in messages, by the way, because
Yeah.
text messages have turned into the new way people need things from you, which is annoying. But I only have a 30-minute Instagram limit and / social media limit. Like I'm not on Twitter I'm not like doing that all day on my phone.
You guys
So-
know what else I've done?
what?
I have forced myself to finish the New York Times connection puzzle before I can check Instagram in a day. True.
Connections or Wordle? Connections.
No,
Is
connections.
hard.
Connections
Yeah,
is hard.
It's hard.
I am a ninja at code names, which is a cousin of. Oh,
we should have
I
a
do.
game night
And
someday.
you know why? And Dave, you're so
Yeah.
proud of me. Are you giving me points for this, Dave? Look at this great mental health around
Yes.
technology. But you know why? It's not that I don't love Instagram. I love it. And especially for work events, really useful platform. And I just love it. And for hobbies and surfing and everything. But what I don't like is the habits, these jerky and addictive habits of like, you catch yourself just picking up your phone and swiping to it right away. And like,
Yeah.
and that I was like, oh, I just want to break the habit. So I just threw in something else. I threw in, supporting a publisher's gaming business. And
The best hack is to change the shortcut for the app to go somewhere else every time you open it.
oh, I don't need to do that because I'm not trying to go to zero. I'm just trying to like rewire. I wired my brain in a direction. I just want to like expand. Like,
How screwed up is this? Or it's not even screwed up. It's just like, wow, we're all so addicted to this thing that
yeah.
it's like no one wants to admit it. And we're sitting here talking about the
we're talking
nuances
about it.
of
I'm
getting
not-
unaddicted.
It's because it's true. It's like
It's so bad.
real. And especially as parents now at the age that our kids are, it's like Dr. Becky did something on it this week. Like she has this new like how to teach your kids about smartphones thing. And and it's like the kid wants your attention all the time, but they see you giving your phone attention.
No,
and
they
they
see
don't
the
even
back
start.
of your phone.
The back of your phone, right? Is like
it's
the new interface.
heartbreaking.
And like we never.
Yeah, when she
dealt with that
framed
with
it
our
that
parents.
way, it really changed the way I thought about it. I'm like, oh wow, like your
Yeah.
kid is seeing the back of your phone, not your eyes. Oof.
It's hard. We live in a hard time, guys.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think so. I
And
think
it's
it's
the
all
defaults.
whatever the routine is, it's good to mix it up. It's good to throw a curveball for your brain. I'm also just like, I'm not getting any younger. I gotta keep the noggin sharp with those New York Times games.
Well, also in our
noggin.
dinner last night, we discussed how we're like the most unlucky generation because we're the last ones that are going to actually get diseases and like
Oh,
be
God,
overweight
here we
and all
go.
this stuff. But the next generation is
Don't
going to be
bring the
so set up
AGI
for
living
success.
forever God
It's
stuff
not-
into this
It's less
conversation. Brit.
AGI, more longevity,
Yeah.
solving a lot of cancers
They
and
both
diseases.
both communities have their false prophets.
yeah.
Well, either way,
I don't know.
Think we
I
are
think
kind of
it's-
screwed. I think like the big breakthroughs are in like 10 years away, and we're going to be
We'll see.
like 50. We're going to miss out on a lot of stuff.
I think we just don't know. Like
Yeah, I
that'll
think we have no
certainly be
idea.
true at some point. I know Yuri Milner, God bless Yuri, he really thinks that he still has the shot to get to 150 or whatever. We just don't know. But science is cool. Okay, so we're undecided on what should happen to Google, but very, very curious. I still think I'm intrigued by this idea that a breakup could be good for it. Could help it with some mojo.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, not just it, but for the ecosystem, right? Like
Yeah.
seeing
not
like
just Google.
1,000 perplexities bloom would be actually very good for Silicon Valley,
But wouldn't you say all the others need to be broken up too in that case?
Yeah,
Sure.
sure. But it's much harder. I think it's easier to look at Google. I think Amazon's actually quite a bit easier to look at.
Yeah, Amazon makes sense.
Amazon, that what always comes up is spinning off AWS, but I'm not sure what that does. Right? I mean,
nothing.
I guess it makes. I mean, the commerce business is,
Yeah,
depending
that's
on
fair.
the time.
It
profitable
takes
or
the
not,
cash
or-
cow out of the commerce business and makes the
Yeah.
commerce business have to compete more directly with other commerce businesses. So maybe that'd be better. Yeah.
But it's competing with Temu and Shein and these
Which are
businesses.
breaking the
Shein.
which are like doing shady,
Shein.
breaking the law-ish stuff anyway. And
Well,
we should just...
they're closing the de minimis loophole, so now
Good.
they're
So
doing.
AWS is only 17% of Amazon's total revenue at $89 billion versus commerce at $434 billion.
Yeah, but it's the profits. It's the profits, and
profits.
it's also
Fair.
going to grow. I mean, I think all. The other takeaway, just shifting gears slightly, and not to go too far down the AI rabbit hole, or since we don't have Sam, maybe we can actually have an interesting conversation on this subject. But
I was going to say, let's actually have an AI conversation.
But I actually don't know. I see arguments from all sides of this, but I do think something that struck me, and maybe this is obvious to you guys, but most conversations with people trying to make predictions in AI, everyone says it's really early. It's early, And what I'm hearing come out more and more is similar to that, but also we don't know. So it's not as much it's early and we have like high conviction that the patterns will follow, both in terms of the efficiencies from compute and training the models and so forth. I'm sensing a very subtle amped up of the anything could happen. We don't know if the scaling laws will continue. And this Daniela, the co-founder of Anthropic,
Finally
said this. And for some reason, when she said it, and again, I don't think it's that different from what people have been saying, other though a slight shift in emphasis, it really made me think that we have to be very careful to watch the hype around this technology. I mean, my actual opinion is that it's going to be transformative in so many ways. But there just are so many unknowns. And I think we don't talk enough about the fact that this is fundamentally based on thinking that scaling patterns around compute and things that have been uncovered in certain models of data and data analysis kind of stretch to infinity. And I think that's just such a big if.
Jess, can I ask you a question? Just to
yes.
throw it a reverse question to you as sort of the journalist founder. If you were a venture capitalist investing in AI, what would you be investing in right now based on what you know?
So I don't think what I would invest in would be considered AI. I think I would invest in great companies that filled an important need and that probably used AI in some respect.
Right. Well, all companies use AI, but what?
Yeah, but I don't think I would.
What types of categories would you be most excited about?
I don't know. I mean, I do invest, but I invest in news businesses. I don't invest in tech companies. And I mean, the kinds of products I am interested in products like, 10 variants of a headline, which again, I don't even think you really need AI to do, but AI can make much better, right? I'm interested in turn this article into a video and a podcast. Notebook LM, right? We haven't talked about Google turning articles into podcasts, very, very interesting. Would I invest my money in any of those businesses? Probably not, because I think they're features and products and, so I don't know. It's a good but tough question because the categories I'm interested in are really great venture-backed investor return businesses. The stuff where I'm like, whoa, is usually related to science and medicine, but I don't know enough, to know about investing in this.
How that turns
Daniela
into a big
also,
business.
she also compared, I think it was her, I'm 90% sure it's her, my brain isn't really working, but I was asking her about when the lines are going to cross, when the costs are going to start, stop escalating precipitously and revenue will catch up, or so cost growth will slow down and revenue growth will speed up. And she said something vague, and I was being cheeky and said something like, is that what you tell your investors, right? But how do you get, Google and Amazon, to invest off the lines are going to cross?
What did she say? In the
and
next
so I
few
think
years?
this is, no, she didn't give any specifics, which made me a little nervous. Not that I would expect her to be exactly 19 months from now, but I think if she
Vinod
wants
Khosla
people,
was pretty. He was next 5 years.
oh, Vinod, but Vinod will also he'll get granular on why he thinks that, and you can agree or disagree. But I believe it was her, maybe someone else, who likened it to biotech investing. And at that point I went, because biotech investing is not historically known as the most lucrative type of investing, right? I mean, it's a very, you could have lightning in a bottle. You don't really know. There's so many unknowns. You may get through some part of the regulatory process, but you don't really know. And then your hope is to be like tucked into a big pharma company, right? So I thought that was and it's what she wasn't making it as an apples to apples comparison, but I did think it was slightly cautious that was a comparison that brought up, because biotech investing has not been tech investing.
Yeah.
So
I think a couple things on this topic which are becoming clear the last few weeks. I'm hearing the same narrative, Jess, from a lot of people. We were at a, Brit said, like, we were at a, off the record dinner last night with a lot of one very large capital manager, but a lot of seed funds. And, I would say a good majority of people are saying the same thing. They're starting to admit that, despite all of the research, despite everybody being involved in every conversation in AI going on, people just don't know. And one of the overarching things people were talking about a lot is we're starting to run into fundamental physics here, right? Like Microsoft quite literally had to buy a nuclear power plant, right? Yeah. We're running into the speed at which data can move across fiber optics, right?
Yeah.
And these are very real things. In particular, the energy thing is super, super, super real, right? So if the current transformer-based architecture is the way in which we're going to achieve the big next breakthroughs and all of this stuff, and in order to do that, you need, billions and billions and billions of dollars to build hyperscale, blah, blah, blah stuff that requires nuclear power plants. I mean, anybody can go listen to the Titans of Nuclear podcast and learn about nuclear power. It's very, very expensive. And in particular, it's very expensive in years of time that it takes to build these things, right?
Yeah.
And so you're just up against this thing, which is very simple. A simple way to think of it is like, we're probably going to be kind of where we are right now for a lot longer than people think. If the current architecture and the current energy and the current capital needs are the gating factors.
Yeah.
Now, if there's some big breakthrough in architecture to a totally new architecture, of which, there are plenty of projects working on that. But guess what? The last architecture took 60 years, right?
Yeah.
So, there's plenty of people working on it with not small resources and very smart people. We might see another breakthrough, but I don't know. It's probably going to be a while, and I don't think anyone has any clue, right? And I think people are just starting to kind of admit that. And I have one other point, but, go ahead.
No, and I was just gonna say, am I converting you guys to lesses? Say I'm gonna come back?
No. So
we had to try to play some pessimism today.
So here's my more take. So that's the I guess you could call it the less take at the super high scale kind of people that are deploying hundreds of millions and billions to go after this foundational thing, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a different thing going on that is more small tech that is really important, which I think I've talked about a little bit in the past, but I feel like I've gotten some clarity on it the last many weeks, particularly being in Japan and just talking to people that were on that trip with us, including Guillermo from Vercel, and just talking about what's going on with developers and software engineering. And I think that there is a foundational, massive breakthrough in software engineering that has happened in the last 3 months that people are not paying enough attention to. I was able to build an app for myself using AI software engineering tools, which would have cost $1 to $2 million in seed capital to build, and 5 people, and maybe 1 year to 2 year, maybe call it 12 to 18 months of time and $1 to $2 million of seed capital. And I was able to build this for myself in a couple of weeks. We're talking an iOS app, a web app, a backend, really pretty advanced data processing stuff, which you could not do this a year ago. Okay. And so if there's around, call it 4 million software engineers in the world, and there's, close to 2 billion plus, app users in the world, there's a huge chasm in the number of people that can develop software and the number of people that use software every single day. And trillions of dollars of value have accrued based on those 4 million software engineers, right? Give or take. Mm-hmm. And so if what's happening is truly real, which I believe that it is, I think what's going to happen is two things. One, the value of all software being developed is kind of rapidly going to zero right now, because anyone can build anything that they want for any workflow in their business or their personal life very, very quickly and for very low cost. And so that means that like the value of software in the business equation of entrepreneurship and investing is rapidly chasing zero, right? Which kind of goes to what you just said, Jess, that the value of what to invest in becomes the business value, the customer experience, is the distribution that you're able to get for the product experience you're developing happening? Are all of these business questions happening? Are you able to acquire real assets in the real world faster, which is something Sam talks a lot about? Are you able to, build a real business by using software in a way that is radically enhanced? And I've been calling this the era of personal software. Like, we're actually shifting from enterprise software, just like in the 70s and 80s, the only people that could afford to build computers were the mainframe computer owners, right? The IBMs and the customers of IBM. And then the 80s became about personal computers and the ability for computers to be on every desk. We've mostly been using enterprise and SaaS software, billion user apps, right? Big companies that develop deca-billion-dollar, if not $100 billion market caps. And we all use the same software. That's basically the mainframe era from the 70s and 80s, the 60s and 70s. And now we're shifting to the personal software era, where people can build their own software for their own use case. They can build it for their friends, their small groups. And you don't have to depend on an organization to build you everything anymore. And I think that this is actually going to be a radical change in how the world operates. And it's kind of completely separate from this bigger AI question, and will also be profoundly huge in its own right. And so I think that's the other thing going on.
Because we don't need the level of training. I mean, it's not AGI, right? It's coding assistance. Yeah,
it's like we already passed the Turing test on software engineering. No one's talking about how amazing this is. Like,
a lot of people are. I mean, you're hearing more and more about it, and I think Daniela too was talking about how at Anthropic, like, using Claude for software engineering, like, has caused them to like think about how they think about headcount projections and growth and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones that deserve the credit. It was Claude Sonnet that caused this to happen. Like, it was, to put a fine point on it, if it were not for Sonnet, this software engineering breakthrough, I don't think would be happening right now. So you can like literally go to the day that model was published is the day that this began.
If you look at the same corollary in content, because this kind of happened in like the 2010 era, right? Where like content used to just come from a small subset of, the content providers, the TV networks, the magazines, even some big digital media websites. And then all of a sudden it exploded to let anyone create YouTube, and all the, social media happened. Is that an interesting sort of analogy
I'm sort of sighing, because what happened is lowering the barrier to content creation just led to a bunch of crap.
Right. Well, I think that's what's going to happen.
Well, you both were able to build businesses on top of that wave.
Yes, but like it's more and more difficult to build a news and media company right
there's
now.
Plenty of it, very large.
Not advising.
I mean, Sam's got an entire fund dedicated to people doing this, right? Like that was enabled by that technology era.
On the user side, I think it's led to what we were just talking about, which is like so much user fatigue. There's like all this content. None of us are getting the same things.
Well, it changes the unit economics in the business. The question is like, what's the unit economics of the business model? So the flurry of content did not have a sustainable business model for high quality. There wasn't a business model attached to it, right? There wasn't a way to consistently make money.
Sure, but even if apps are charging
same
a subscription
point.
fee or a download fee, like consumers are only going to be able to pay so much for like the
Well, I
trillion
think
number
the
of
real
apps there are
utility
in
will
10
rise,
years.
right? So like, I mean,
But I think
it's
that's
an
the
interesting analogy, Brett.
everlasting challenge of entrepreneurship, right? Is to discover a business model in a market that will be your customer at the end of the day.
And ultimately something people need, right? I mean, I do think a lot of these things break out into like, is this something I use for entertainment or to waste time or get enjoyment from, or sort of is there a utility? And I think in the software world, you could see both. I mean, Dave, what is on my mind is I'm thinking, okay, how do we connect this point to where we started about like the concentration of big tech? And because our world of like truly personalized software, I mean, I guess the question is like, who controls the underlying keys and economic engine to it? But
yeah, I mean, I think that's a big question right now, right? Like a lot of people ask me this question, Dave, when do you think consumer AI apps are going to show up? And I always answer it. It's very simple actually to answer that question. Right now, you're seeing almost no consumer AI apps because it's so expensive to use the big models, right? Like if I were going to build a consumer AI app of any kind, let's call it a social app of any kind, and I needed to call that API every single time a consumer interacted with the app, it's prohibitively expensive to build something that would be calling the OpenAI API a billion times a day, right? The social network that I built, we were doing 1 billion timelines views a day at peak, right? And so like, there's no possible way we could have afforded to leverage AI in that model. Now, could you embed a small llama model or something like that in your binary in your app? Maybe, but you'd end up with this like very, very, very large, app, which that doesn't really work. So then what's the answer? The answer is, well, you need to depend on Apple making their small models that are on device available via API, which they haven't yet. Right? They're using it themselves. Everybody that's got iOS 18 on their phone is seeing summarization of every notification, every email. That's all happening.
By the way, Gemini's doing that too. I noticed that today, which
they're using a centralized model though, right? They're using a cloud-based model. Whereas Apple's doing it on device and delivering it.
Is it bothering you guys that because the Gemini thing is now in your Gmail, the search box isn't centered?
I don't use Gmail. I use Superhuman.
Oh,
So maybe I should switch back.
I couldn't tell if a pixel's in the wrong place, if my life depended on it. But like, I look at it and I'm like, I
can tell. That would bother
justify the. Dave, I think that's a great point. And a question I should have asked Marissa about her consumer AI business.
Yeah.
Sunshine.
You've got to have cheap models. You got to have
But
cheap
they
or
are
free,
doing, they are doing some on-device stuff, especially for privacy, because if they're looking at photos and they can help you create photo albums.
Who is Sunshine?
Sunshine. Yeah, they have a photo product and a contact product.
They're doing something.
And it sounds like
it sounds like algorithmic, not AI to me, but I don't know.
Tomato. No, just kidding. I mean, it's kind of, Dave, I've gotten 3 op-ed ideas to assign you. I really think all you have to do is you have to take your comments on this podcast.
All right,
and
let's
put
do
them
it.
into an AI.
No,
and you
notebook
say,
Ellen.
write an op-ed
All right.
for the information on this.
All right.
And then that's your outline. Don't give me that like raw crap. That's your outline. And then you inject yourself, and you've got another. It's sort of the modal switching of your expertise throughout channels, and then I can monetize it. So I think this is really a win-win.
You're welcome. All right, let's work on it.
Anything else cooking, friends, before we wrap? I will say, just to wrap out the AI news, I thought The Information had a great story this week about how OpenAI is looking to diversify its infrastructure from Microsoft. So just speaking on
Of
about
course they
just-
are. They're looking to diversify their infrastructure to anywhere.
Yes. And you know what? I bet Microsoft is all in favor of this too, because they don't
Yeah.
want to have all their workloads either.
They don't want to buy another nuclear power plant. Yeah.
No, one is enough. But
I
thought
don't
it was
think
interesting.
also the last thing I'll say about this conversation we also had last night was that the question was asked, like, would you have invested in OpenAI's $100 billion round? And it was
No
actually
fucking
a
way.
resounding no.
Yeah.
And like, the tenor of these investors around the table was just like, I think this could totally
To be
become a
fair,
zero. We'll
sorry.
see. Yeah.
Didn't mean to cut you off at the part you said where you said it could go to zero. But also it's not a venture capital investment, right? So my
Well, yes.
sense. So that was also if you had
we
had
were with a bunch
different
of
kinds
seed stage fund
Yeah.
managers, but it was theoretically like if you were Thrive, if you played in that world,
had
would you have
a
invested?
$30 million fund. No. Well, that's exciting. Britt, I got to say, you got a shout. So at dinner last night, a lot of pod listeners, at WTF. And
Cool.
Campbell
for
Brown.
listening.
I don't know if you all know Campbell Brown. Campbell
Oh,
Brown was
Campbell
Meta.
is lovely.
We love Campbell. She way. I first knew her as a CNN anchor growing up, looking
Same.
up to her as a journalist.
What's she doing now?
She's advising some companies. It sounds like starting something, but she wouldn't tell me what. And active pod listener, I said something and she was like, yeah, you said that on the episode. But I got to tell you, she was also talking about how she talks to Claude, Anthropic's chatbot, when she's lonely. And she says her kids,
Hearing this
I
a
don't think
lot
she'll
from people. People last
mind if
night
she-
said this.
And I was thinking back to your prediction, which we all sort of a little bit rolled our eyes at, and I you were right. People really are using these chatbots.
They're just
And
talking to
not just
doctor-
people of
all
all
the time.
generations.
There was a
Yeah.
doctor at dinner last night. He's a doctor in residence, I guess, at one of these funds, and he was actually quite impressive.
What is the doctor in does
He's
he
doing a
help
lot
the,
of
the
medical-
VCs or
Healthcare,
he
health investing.
diligences?
Health investing.
Yeah.
And he reminded us that loneliness is the equivalent of smoking 10 cigarettes per day. In terms
Where
of
we're at with right now with the loneliness epidemic,
Yeah.
10 to 15 cigarettes a day. So people just need
like, it has the
something to talk
equivalent
to.
health impact to 10 cigarettes a day.
I was thinking of. I actually think tomorrow I might not have to talk to a single person, and it might be delightful until the
Yeah,
evening.
you've been a glutton
Because I
all
have to
week.
get up
Especially
early
because
and I've
Sam's
got to
gone. Yeah.
and
it's
I've got to
great.
get on a plane and I've got to be in New York for to celebrate the Information's co-executive editor Martin Pierce, who's getting a big award. I got to
Aw.
present him his award, and I don't think I have to. I mean, I'll be polite to the people at the airport, but otherwise, I don't think I'm going to talk to anyone.
It's great.
I'm really
don't
looking
need
forward to
to.
this. Anything else cooking? Anything else we need to update the people on?
Just as a quick PCC note, pop culture corner for those that aren't aware, Taylor Swift wore glitter freckles to the Chiefs game this week. These are like stickers that look like freckles, but they're like shiny, colorful. And
Isn't that a bit
gotta
teeny
say,
bop for
it
Taylor?
was a little questionable. She's like about to be 35. I think we're like past the peak at this point for
Is
glitter
that
freckles.
WAG?
Stick
What's
with millennial culture, Tay.
WAG is the it's the wives of the what is it actually?
Oh,
stand
wives
for?
and girlfriends. Wives and
No,
Wives and
girlfriends.
girlfriends,
Jess,
yeah.
it's like a Gen Z trend of
Yeah.
some kind.
Well, either I'm old or she just made a bad fashion choice. So
She does that.
for the first
No,
for the 1st
we're
time in a
getting
while.
older.
So I just want to Anyway, you guys should
Okay, we
look
can
that
all
up if
move
you're
on.
interested.
We can all
Yeah.
move on. We can hope for a more exciting football season. Dave, we've got
49ers
to
play
compare
tomorrow
us.
night. Let's go. We really
You know,
need to.
Last
really
game
need
was
to
a
step-
heartbreaker.
Yeah,
Heartbreaker.
Not good. And we'll see
But
what happens.
before we I pretend to be a real knowledgeable about football, we should probably end the episode.
Oh,
But
wait, Jess, actually, there is one very important sports thing going on, which I saw today, that
the Wimbledon
the
line
Wimbledon
calls?
line calls thing is
Yes.
a very interesting
What does that mean?
development.
What does that mean?
So Wimbledon has announced that it will use AI to make I don't know if every line call, like, or if it's just
Like there are no
I think for line
referees
calls
anymore?
So there are
It says we'll
there's
make out and fault line calls.
out and fault. Okay.
Yeah.
Shouldn't every sport do this?
Yeah,
Basketball,
probably.
soccer.
I mean,
And they
football,
are.
right?
also
and they are.
baseball on the bases for sure. Like, did he touch? Who
or
touched
at least
it first?
enhanced, right? Like they should at least give the ref a call that they can then confirm or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that referees are going to basically turn into robots. That'll be a really interesting future.
I think this is all good. And I think Dave, the headlines I saw were really playing up, the tradition of
Breaking
the All
with
England
tradition.
Club and blah, blah, blah. But then you keep reading, and actually only Grand Slam not doing this, I think, is the French Open. So Wimbledon's
Of course.
not on the bleeding
Of
edge
course,
here.
Roland Garros doesn't want in on
Yes.
this. Yeah.
But I'm all for it. I'm all for this, I mean, why not? And I think also, especially in tennis, they tested this stuff forever. So I think they probably are at the place where the players prefer it too, actually. I mean, I don't think it was naturally that way when they first tested it, but I think they've gotten to this point where, but it is just
I just
bizarre.
like that they call it live electronic line calling.
Sounds so much fancier.
I also like how they say AI. Like this is, like it. I don't know sort of what LLM or what model or you're using a diffusion model to this. I don't think so, right?
I
Like
don't think so.
I don't think so.
It's
but
live electronic line calling.
did you guys see the speaking of this? I bought a
LELC.
domain name because this is what one does when they have ideas. And the .com was very inexpensive. The .ai this domain has nothing to do with AI. I don't need a .ai, but the .ai was like multiples higher. I thought that was so funny.
This is to channel Sam for a second. This is when you know when to short an asset class.
Yeah,
when,
I think so.
When an asset class is .domain. So like, remember when Web3 was using .xyz?
.xyz.
And
Yeah.
.xyz domains went through the roof. They were like $10,000 per domain. So like when that happens, you should go short.
Yeah,
Totally.
I agree.
Yeah.
Also, Sam though would also say don't short like Nvidia because that's just stupid.
Well,
So
obviously not
Well, no,
those
don't short
companies.
Nvidia.
Yes.
but
No,
short the
just
rest
other
of the asset class. Yeah.
Nvidia is not .ai.
In case it isn't obvious, we are not registered financial advisors. Okay, with that, friends, we will say thank you to the audience for tuning in for another week. And for all those people who came out to WTF, because I know you're listeners, thank you. It was really, really fun. To the back channel for keeping us on our toes on all global affairs. Thank you. If you like the pod, please share it, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Find more information about each episode in the show notes and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.